What's up, everybody? This is episode number 42 of Rolling with Reason. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode. If you decided to come in and join me and listen to what we have to say for this week. This week, we are predominantly going to talk about a little bit of philosophy. I had a comment that was posted and asked for my opinions and thoughts on philosophy and maybe where I stand on that and shedding some light on that. I think first and foremost, I'm not a philosopher. I don't know much about philosophy. I don't know much about anything, really. Sometimes it feels like. For me, maybe that's a part of my philosophy. Maybe that's a part of my being for who I am as just another human being who is existing and living this life. I thought about this a little more than I usually do today, coming into this podcast. This one's actually going to be posted late because I had such a hard time understanding what it means to have a philosophical view towards this uh, being. Um, it's a very intricate and subtle, delicate question that I think you have to ask yourself. I think a lot of people can kind of point themselves in the same direction, but still be adhering to maybe different types of philosophical thoughts. There's a lot of great philosophers out there, and I've made quotes about them over time, but I don't feel like doing that as much here. For this episode, I guess I just kind of wanted to express myself and what I think about my being and kind of what am I doing, and maybe just walk through a process of what that feels like for me when I think I'm having philosophy related thoughts. Computers are awesome. Computers are great. Computers are something that I find extremely fascinating, extremely productive, extremely efficient with helping what is the industrial life of Americans today, or just the population today. Any place where we can implement technology to make our lives easier and make things more efficient will be impossible, I think, without computers. Without having these computational machines that let us alleviate some of the burden that otherwise we would have taken on ourselves. But I think there's something to be said to that too. Something to be said about skill. Something to be said about the thought process of us ourselves when it comes to creation and what is skill. Skill can easily be lost. I know I said I wasn't going to go on to sayings and quoting, but there is that saying that says, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I think that's very, very true. And I think that can look drastically different for everybody. But I think when it comes to skills that are supposed to help us move forward in life, it should be held up with maybe an extra an extra effort of importance on our part to not delineate from that skill and what that skill is, as I said, I think is definitely different for everybody. I personally have a hard time understanding what my skill is. I would like to think that everybody has a hard time understanding what their skill is. But I think sometimes we get lucky, or maybe just out of stubbornness trying to find it, we have the potential to find that skill, that thing that we're naturally gifted at, that thing that, when you do it people look to you to do that sort of thing. People look to you to, if you're good at cooking, people look to you to cook. If you're good at taking care of kids, people look at you to take care of their kids. If you're good at photography, people look to you for photography. If you're good at you know trades work like being an electrician, people look to you to be the electrician to solve the problems. All of that stuff I think is extra important, and I think those are all their individual skills, and I think all of us possess that skill. I think, if one of those are your skills, you should take the time to craft that skill, become as best at that skill as you possibly can. And I think that comes with the sense of not losing it, being afraid to lose that thing, that skill. And I bring that up because, like I said, I struggle with that. Um, I guess when I'm at work, I think to myself, um, I can do the thing I'm doing now, and there's some days I love doing it, a lot of days that I don't. Environments play a huge role, in particular on that kind of outcome. I would say for me, however, um, this is all about me, really. Work is never supposed to be easy, but having a skill that you're good at, and if you can find fulfillment in that skill, I think that will be the thing that pays you in the long run in terms of life experiences. I believe the thing that I'm doing now could play a role and is playing a role in what is my personal, unique human experience. But I think I know I wanted to take a different role. Um, and what that's going to look like is a hard thing. And I think that's where um, goal setting and determination, grit comes into play. And we always talk about the journey, and it's easy to look past the journey sometimes. And I think in my particular case, I think it's easy for me, um, to try and do it all at once. And it's because I have that grit and that want to, and that, you fall down, you get back up, dust yourself off, and you just keep pushing. I think that's an exceptional skill and a trait to have. But I think there's a caveat to that. The Achilles heel, the thing that can really jeopardize this human experience. And that's if you keep stepping in the same hole that you didn't take a second to look at, or slow down to enjoy some of the harder moments. Having that gratitude and being grateful for what it is that you have, and letting certain things go that don't matter. Those are those are human experiences. That is the human experience. And I think if you're taking the effort and you're taking the moves to achieve your goals, your small goals that lead to big goals that should never be ending, um, That's going to be beneficial. But keeping the skills updated that need to be updated and accurate as you're moving forward is ever more important. And not pursuing what is convenient, but pursuing what is meaningful is a huge contributor to that. I may have said something about it last week. I may have said something about it before. I will say it again. I think there's a way to use these artificial intelligence tools, AI. Last week, I talked a lot about classical models, kind of how they work roughly, being very broad and kind of breaking down the difference between what we were seeing before. Those are like the predecessors to what is deep learning neural networks now. It's just a mathematical patterning technique with probability to generate what looks like human thought and expression, but ultimately it's not. And so the utmost criticality is important for evaluation of those things. Without that, I think we tend to easily ask questions that are not fundamental questions. I think the art and the process of curiosity in most cases will lead you towards what are purposeful questions. But we can get lost in the sight of asking purposeful fundamental questions, trying to pursue what is expedient, what is impulsive. Whereas if we take the time to really ask the question properly and thoughtfully and thoroughly and evaluate the output that is given back to us, we can see gaps in the knowledge presented to us. And we can also see valuable insights and knowledge into what it is that we're pursuing. But overextension and not fundamentally honing in the skill that is important will be detrimental to the long race. And so it seems that skill keeps coming up as I'm talking through this philosophy. The skill of human thought, the pureness of human thought can only be conceivable by other humans. Other people are only capable of interacting with what is that emotional state or that mode of being and feeling in that moment and communicating with you as a species consciously to have a conversation. That to me is what it means to be human. That to me, the process of engagement and intentional thought, provoking a sense of meaning that is only obtainable in that way. It can be mimicked, sure, but not replicated the same. Maybe one day that'll be upon us, but as of right now, I just don't see it. And would I like to see it? Yeah. But right now, you can't crutch. I can't crutch and leave fundamental mistakes on the table because of an impulsive expediency for an answer versus the skillful, thoughtful grind of book reading and highlighting and writing and rethought hashing and groups of friends that you talk to and intermingle with about that stuff to be able to really hash out the ideas and talk about what it is. That is of the utmost importance, I think, in terms of philosophy for me. I haven't found that group of friends yet. And so I think that makes things a lot harder for me. Sure, I can talk to people about the stuff that I'm doing, but the emotional state isn't there as it is intended to be for when I talk about those things. I can feel that the connection isn't the same there as I intend it to be. Maybe in moments or times I feel like I'm running a million miles an hour just because I'm excited to tell somebody something about what I'm working on. And then I realized after the conversation that maybe that wasn't the thing that they wanted to hear, or maybe they misinterpreted me, or maybe I was too detailed. But I think if good intent fixes that and it makes it to where I don't have to worry about that thing as much, but it still does cross my mind. I think a lot of life is like that for me anyways. I think there's a lot of stuff that crosses my mind and I try to understand it. I try to cope with it. I try to work with it. I try to use the debugging method, the rubber duck debugging method, where you uh, break down all of the possibilities and possible actions. And that helps. But sometimes action is the only answer. Even though I don't have groups of people that I'm talking to right now about the things that I'm working on, I know that's inevitable to come. I say this predominantly out of the fact that I feel I will naturally be drawn to that. But I think it has to be in the context of in my free time, I can't exhaust that resource of time. If I exhaust the resource of time in my free time by talking about programming, but not executing programming and learning programming, I can then fall off of the skill of programming. There's the whole topic of that changing in and of itself, sure. Undisputable, undeniable, I agree. I don't know what that looks like. I can't spend too much time worrying about it though, because my skill is the one where I just figure that stuff out by reading the books that teach me that skill. There's a sense of relief when I say that. It feels good to say that. But it doesn't take away from this thing I'm talking about, time consumption. At work, I'm not doing what I want to be doing, which is the programming and coding. I will get there, undeniably, undoubtedly. And if I don't, I'm going to die trying. If that happens, then I find it more affordable to have the social conversations outside of work to talk about programming. Because then I won't feel the exhaust of my time that is transitioning into that industry and field. Time is a beautiful thing. It's finite in its wisdom, but also daunting in its limitations. Time is a representation of what to be grateful for due to its limitations. but catastrophically a motivator to the point of where you can neglect moments of being grateful. People often talk about what is um, the life and work balance. Um, what is balance? What is work? What is life? Um, Without risk, no reward. Without big risk, no big reward. How long of a big risk are we willing to take? How much of that crucial excess time are we willing to give away in the pursuit of that skill to bring us meaning? Often people say, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, I'll do it next weekend. And then it turns into a year, another year, 20 years go by, 40 years go by, if you're lucky. And that's life almost in a nutshell. So risk should be taken, but methodically, and not to depreciate what is human existence, to be grateful. Enjoy the moments, even the bad ones. Enjoy the good ones. So I have a lot of work to do myself all the time. I've got a lot of stuff I always need to work on. None of us are perfect, but it's the effort that makes the meaningful difference. What's your effort? What's your difference? That's a question that only we ourselves can answer. And I think sitting alone, thinking about it, is a good way to get that idea and get that aim. And having the conversation with other people, ultimately bring that the meaning of what it is. Not the conversation with hardware. So, as I challenge myself to find my meaning and my purpose, I guess right back at you. Find your meaning, find your purpose, find your skill. Enjoy the time, manage your time. Don't just let it slip. If you let it slip, you'll blink and it's gone. Maybe if you manage it, you'll blink and you'll remember where it went. I don't know that though. I think most people don't. This episode was different. I'm always curious to hear what you guys have to say or think. So this one was more of a big opener, a big expressional piece, thoughtful piece, slow pauses. This one felt more like a journal, I guess. But let me know what you guys thought. Let me know what you think. Do you have the same similar thoughts? Do you walk these same lines of uncertainty? What do you do about it? What do you think about it? Episode number 42, Trolling with Reason. We're doing it. We're doing that thing. I'm not sure what it is, but if you made it this far and you listened, hey, thank you. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm trying. I'm trying. Thanks for listening, everybody. Peace.
Thanks for listening. Stay resilient, embrace the struggle, and keep moving forward.